Hello and welcome to Business Daily. I'm Lee Jae-yoon in Seoul. We have a lot of stories lined up for you today, so let's get started with a look at the day's highlights. The government and ruling Democratic Party agreed to push for the passage of a 10 trillion won supplementary budget during a June parliamentary session. We take a closer look at what's ahead for Korean chipmakers as their earnings skyrocket this year amid a rapidly expanding global market. These stories and more coming right up. Details of the Moon administration's plans for job creation are becoming clearer by the day. This morning, representatives from the ruling party met with the government to lay out some basics concerning the budget's purpose and how it will be paid for. And they also want the bill ready for a vote next month. Our Shin Se-min starts us off.
The plan is to have the supplementary budget bill ratified by the National Assembly in June for the smooth execution of the budget in the second half of the year. The ruling Democratic Party of Korea and the government on Wednesday discussed some of the details before drawing up the finalized budget proposal worth some $9 billion. During the first consultation between the two since President Moon took office 3 weeks ago, the two sides agreed on 3 points. 1, that job creation is the sole purpose of the budget. 2, the extra budget has to be executed without issuing government bonds. And 3, the procedure should be handled swiftly so the budget can be submitted to the National Assembly for review by the related committee and put up for a vote during the June session.
The passing of an extra budget bill is absolutely necessary, and now is the right time to do it.
The supplementary budget is all about perfect timing. The ministry will make sure the extra budget is executed as planned for maximum effectiveness.
The ruling party is asking that the budget be used to create more government jobs in the safety and welfare, health and social service sectors. It also said the budget should boost the salaries of senior citizens and double maternity pay for the first 3 months. Taking up all the requests and fine-tuning the details, the Finance Ministry will submit its finalized version of the extra budget bill next month. Still, questions remain on whether this unweighted supplementary budget will be the catalyst in realizing the president's campaign pledge of creating more than 800,000 public sector jobs during his 5-year term. Shin Se-min, Business Daily.
New data show that business sentiment for June is looking tepid due to a number of factors, but state-run agencies say their outlook is still bright and that the slight declines are just temporary. Our Kim Ji-yeon reports.
Business sentiment among Korean companies for next month remains static for the most part, but edged up slightly for some. They expect a decline in domestic demand along with increased competition and economic uncertainties. Data released by the Bank of Korea on Wednesday show the business survey index for manufacturing firms sit unchanged for June at 84. For non-manufacturing companies, it was at 80, up 2 points from this month. A reading below 100 means pessimists outnumber optimists. Business sentiment among manufacturers had been rising for 4 months in a row starting in January thanks to strong exports. But in May, it fell by 1 point to 82, marking the first decline in 9 months. Despite the discouraging data for May and June, the Bank of Korea says it remains optimistic that the economy is on track for a recovery. The BOK sees the drop as temporary, chalking it up to fewer working days in May due to holidays early in the month. Statistics Korea, meanwhile, released its data for output across all industries, indicating activities has slowed in the month of April by 1%. Output in manufacturing and mining sectors slipped by over 2% compared to the previous month, the steepest decline in over a year. This was attributed to a slowdown in businesses that had recently been driving up production, including the semiconductor and automobile sectors. Kim Ji-yeon, Business Daily.
President Moon Jae-in's advisory committee discussed on Wednesday ways to enhance the competitiveness of Korea's small and medium-sized enterprises. The new administration plans to raise the status of the Small and Medium Business Administration by turning it into the tentatively named Ministry of Small and Medium Venture Business. The advisory committee suggested giving the new ministry broader powers by enabling it to formulate industrial policies. The panel said there needs to be a two-track approach, having the new ministry manage day-to-day developments in business world, while the trade ministry handles broader policies. Struggling Daewoo Shipbuilding and Marine Engineering may not be able to meet payment deadlines for its subcontractors in June as creditors drag their feet on delivering fresh funds for the company. The shipyard will need at least $88 million to make payments to its partner companies before mid-June. Creditors, led by the state-run Korea Development Bank, had initially planned to inject fresh funds of about $450 million by end May, but that payment, as of now, has not been made. Back in March, creditors had reached an agreement to provide a second bailout package worth $2.6 billion. Lee Na-kyun, former Jeollanam-do province governor and four-term lawmaker of President Moon Jae-in's Democratic Party of Korea, has been confirmed as Korea's new prime minister. After undergoing a confirmation hearing, the vote on Lee's appointment took place during a parliamentary plenary session today, during which he won approval. We will have more on this story on our later newscasts right here on Arirang. With the Korean market setting record highs, investors have seen good gains overall, but individual investors have been getting a smaller slice of the pie. Our Elliot Kim has the story.
Although Korea's KOSPI index has set new highs so far this year, individual investors have not benefited as much from the overall market gains. Large investors instead have seen the most growth. So far this year, the average return in the top 10 sectors net purchased by individual investors sits at 3.5%. This is a long ways away from the 13% overall growth that the index has seen. Over the same period, rates of return in the top 10 categories net purchased by foreign investors and institutions are at 26% and 23% respectively. Experts point out that individuals tend to prefer small and medium cap stocks on the KOSDAQ, rather than the large cap stocks on the KOSPI that have seen a majority of the gains. While there is hope that the tech-heavy KOSDAQ will enjoy similar growth to what the benchmark index has seen so far this year, current signs point to market focus staying on the KOSPI.
While share prices have recently risen, we believe the better strategy is to focus on stocks which are undervalued relative to earnings, rather than pursuing shares that have seen large short-term gains.
It's also been pointed out that the falling prices of commodities, along with increased U.S. protectionist policies, could limit the upward growth of the stock markets. In addition to that, with the U.S. Federal Reserve indicating it will cut assets and raise the interest rates, unforeseen shifts in the global market could be imminent. Elliot Kim, Business Daily.
And moving on to markets, to give us a brief picture of this week's stock market action, we have our Business Daily's markets contributor Choi Jin-seok joining us on the phone today. Hi, Jin-seok.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so how are things looking in today's session? The KOSPI market seemed to be struggling to rebound from its two-day losing streak.
That's right. The KOSPI market fluctuated throughout the session, closing at 2347.38, up 0.16% from the previous session, while the KOSDAQ rose by a relatively large margin to close at 652. The KOSPI market had fallen for the past two sessions as both foreigners and institutional investors had unloaded shares for profit-taking. The market did try hard to rebound during today's session and managed to stay in positive territory. The KOSPI opened the session with a slight downtick, but the index soon erased early losses to rise to as high as 2355, as both foreigners and institutional investors bought shares. However, the market lost steam in the afternoon because foreign investors shifted their position once again to unload shares. By sector, pharmaceuticals, consumer staples, and biotechnology performed strongly, while financials, gas and utilities, and technology performed relatively weakly.
Now, we just heard in the previous report that compared to the KOSPI market, the KOSDAQ has been slow to pick up, but it surpassed 650 for the first time in 7 months. So are things looking up?
The KOSDAQ market has been underperforming the KOSPI for about a year. According to Korea Exchange, the KOSPI index has skyrocketed by more than 18% over the past year, while the KOSDAQ has plummeted by about 6%. In particular, the KOSPI has been outperforming the KOSDAQ ever since it broke the 2200 mark because investors started focusing on large-cap blue-chip stocks. However, today's performance raised expectations for the KOSDAQ to fly high. The KOSDAQ market opened today's session with a slight uptick, soon rising above 650 for the first time in 7 months. By sector, pharmaceuticals and distribution led the way in today's rally. Hanmi Pharma listed on the KOSPI market rose sharply, and this lifted sentiment for other pharma stocks on the KOSDAQ. Expectations that China will reduce its retaliatory measures against Korea's THAAD deployment also helped boost related shares. The KOSDAQ has shown signs of improvements in May too. The index has risen by 3.6%, recording only a slightly lower profit than the KOSPI of 5.5%. Experts say investors are expected to pay more attention to the KOSDAQ going forward because the market is relatively undervalued.
Then what will be the market focus in the latter part of this week?
The focus of this week is global economic indicators. So far, investors have witnessed a somewhat mixed picture. America's consumer spending showed some positive results, but the country's price index fell short of market expectations. China's manufacturing index reported by the government turned out to be better than expected, and the news served as a positive catalyst in the KOSDAQ market. For the rest of the week, investors are expected to pay attention to America's vehicle sales and employment report, as well as China's Caixin manufacturing index. Oil prices will also be in the spotlight for investors. The U.S. stock market mostly fell overnight as the energy sector was hit hard by a sharp decline in oil prices due to Libya's plan to increase production. As more experts and investors are uncertain about the effects of production cuts, concerns over the commodity market are expected to continue, at least in the near term. This has been Choi Jin-seok for Business Daily.
Korean companies are known to be leading producers of memory chips, which help to process data that we use in our laptops, smartphones, flash drives, and many other digital devices. And in recent months, local companies have seen their sales go off the charts. For a closer look into this industry, our Oh Soo-young joins us in the studio today. Welcome, Soo-young.
Hi, June.
All right, so it sounds like an exciting time for Korean chip companies in the global market.
That's right. Industry watchers say that we've entered a period of high demand, a so-called super cycle of memory chips. In fact, some people even call it an ultra super cycle. And Korea's top 2 chip makers are currently very well positioned as they're the biggest players in the global market. Samsung Electronics produces almost half the world's DRAM chips, which are a key component of computers, smartphones, and other digital devices. SK Hynix comes second, taking up a quarter of the global market share. Another huge part of the memory sector is NAND flash. These are more permanent forms of storage found in smartphones, tablet PCs, and your average USB flash drive, as well as solid-state drives. Samsung leads the market share with its cutting-edge 3D vertical NAND technology that's at least a year ahead of its competitors. And SK Hynix comes fifth. Market analysts expect these 2 core markets to grow for the time being, as the demand for faster and better memory capacities is not just growing, it's accelerating, with proliferating use of mobile devices, as well as new data technology that's emerging with the 4th industrial revolution.
The Internet of Things, driverless technology, big data, and cloud computing. The 4th industrial revolution will require more and more semiconductors, augmented and virtual reality too.
So with anticipation already sky high and huge jumps in earnings for Korean companies, what kind of potential are we looking at?
Well, prospects for both Samsung and SK Hynix are certainly very rosy. As you said, they're Operating profit for chips jumped to historic highs in the first quarter, and they are clearly hungry for more. Analysts say the two companies will bump up their investment in memory chips this year, a combined $14 billion in facilities alone. That's almost 30% more than 2016. Samsung, for one, is opening up the world's biggest chip factory in Pyeongtaek this year to produce its latest 3D vertical NAND chips. With its eyes on expansion, the Korean tech giant is expected to overtake Intel this year as the world's #1 supplier for the entire semiconductor industry.
The global appetite for Intel's PC processing chips is dwindling while Samsung's SSDs are seeing increasing demand. Samsung is expected to see its operating profit for semiconductors jump to around $27 billion from $11.5 billion last year. SK hynix is also likely to see its profit quadruple to more than $10 billion. While the growth rate of earnings may slow down next year, the profit margins for both firms are expected to stay strong.
Then how about risk factors? I mean, what are some of the things that Korean chip makers should brace for, if anything?
Well, Samsung Electronics is still enjoying its first mover's advantage in developing advanced memory chips. Experts say it's at least a year ahead of others in both DRAM and NAND flash technologies. SK hynix, along with other competitors from Taiwan, Japan, and the US, are playing catch-up with new products. So the competition will intensify in terms of maintaining quality and price competitiveness. As for the mid to long-term future, experts are keeping a close watch on China. As part of its National Growth Initiative for 2025, the Chinese government has pledged around $150 billion to ramp up its memory chip industry. Experts believe it will take 3 to 5 years for Chinese companies to catch up.
With Chinese competitors in the market, the price for core products could drop substantially. The barriers to entry is still high, so it's crucial to retain a 2 to 3 year gap in terms of technology, which would make catching up all the more difficult. So we must invest more boldly and preemptively to widen this gap to retain our leading hold on the market.
Then what can Korean chip makers do to stay ahead of the game?
Well, the memory chip sector only accounts for about a third of the entire semiconductor market. So Korean businesses have been expanding into non-memory or system semiconductors, like processing chips for handsets, displays, and sensors for cameras.
In the future, Korean companies need to enhance their graphic chips for self-driving vehicles. An American company, for instance, only requires a single chip to run a driverless car, but Korean companies require several as of now.
Both companies are still behind when it comes to CPU and GPU products compared to other global corporations.
Korean firms have also been enhancing their foundry businesses, which provide non-memory chip developers without fabs or their own production facilities. Apple and Qualcomm are potential fabless clients in the market, which is expected to hit $61 billion this year, according to market researcher IHS. Samsung currently ranks 4th globally, but it's hoping to take the market by storm by offering next-generation manufacturing services and spinning off its foundry business into a separate corporate entity. SK hynix has also announced its decision to break off its foundry division to help establish a strong client base.
So although near-term prospects look promising, it looks like they will still have to stand on their toes to keep their lead.
Absolutely. Experts believe Korean businesses must come up with paradigm-shifting chips that will bring about a creative destruction of current technology within the next 5 years.
Now, it sounds like constant innovation is the key in all this. Thank you so much for coming in today.
Thank you very much, June.
The leaders of the United States and Germany continue to butt heads over their vision for transatlantic relations. U.S. President Donald Trump tweeted on Tuesday that the U.S. has a massive trade deficit with Germany and accused Berlin of not meeting its defense spending commitments. He added that this is very bad for the U.S. and that it will change. Now, this comes less than a week after Trump criticized trade relations with Germany at the G7 summit and said he will limit imports of German cars. Ambivalence about the relationship appears mutual to a degree. After the G7, German Chancellor Angela Merkel said Europe would have to take its fate into its own hands and that it can no longer fully rely on others. Korea has become the first country in the world to offer terrestrial broadcast in ultra-high definition, or UHD, starting this morning. That's according to the Korea Communications Commission and the Ministry of Science, ICT, and Future Planning, who said the service is available for the country's three major networks, KBS, MBC, and SBS. Now, this means viewers with UHD televisions and in some cases an extra set-top box can enjoy pictures about 4 times clearer than the current HD standard. UHD has around 1 billion different colors compared to HD, which has about 17 million. Although there are millions of UHD TVs in Korea, the audience will be small to start with because only a small percent of households use antennas. Smart farm technology is giving farmers remote control of their crops using the so-called Internet of Things. Chuck big data into the mix and it truly opens up a whole new world. And our Oh Jung-hee shows us how ICT makes farming much less labor-intensive while also helping to produce better quality products.
This is a flower farm in Seongnam, Gyeonggi-do Province. The owner, Yoon Chun-sik, has been using smart farm technology to grow seasonal flowers for over 5 years. That means he's been using the so-called Internet of Things to control the growth environment for his flowers.
What provides the most convenience for his farm management is remote management using his smartphone. He can check the conditions of the flowers and make adjustments to the growing environment anytime, anyplace.
Cameras installed here and there send a live video feed to Yoon's smartphone so Yoon can see how his flowers are doing whenever he wants. The app also connects to sensors in the greenhouse to show data on temperature and humidity.
이쪽에 있는 거는 온도 센서고요. 이쪽에는 그 습도 센서인데 제가 이 하우스 관리하는데 온도 습도를 조절을 하는 거죠. 여기에서 보내지는 데이터를 가지고.
But that's not all. With only a few taps on his phone, Yoon can adjust the temperature, humidity, and even the amount of sunlight. Even when he's miles away, he can open and close the shades on the roof, water the flowers, and turn the fans on and off.
It used to take 8 or 9 hours for me to water the flowers by myself. But after I got this system, I only need 3 or 4 hours. I can spend more time on my family and on myself. I've also been able to grow more flowers in less time, improve their quality, and make more money.
This is in line with the results of a survey by Korea's Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs last year. Thanks to smart farm technology, total production per square meter rose by 28% and production per person by over 40%. Spending on employment dropped by 16% and cases of disease and pest infestation by over 53%. To take these effects to the next level, Korea is already working on the second-generation smart farm. It involves big data analytics to analyze how the crops are growing in their particular environment and to devise a better growth solution. For that, the Korea Institute of Science and Technology is developing a way for farmers to do all that with only a smartphone. The farmer takes photos of his tomato plants, including their fruit, flowers, and stems, and they're automatically transferred to the Institute's web server for an analysis of how much they've grown.
Once it gets the data from the smartphone, the server analyzes changes in the number of tomatoes and their size.
These data help the farmers determine when they can harvest their crops and sell them. As the data accumulate, they'll provide a better picture of the best environment for growing this or that plant.
Gathering the data on the crop's growth and analyzing it is essential to controlling the growth environment, and this will in turn lead to greater yield and better quality.
Korea's agriculture sector has been losing its competitiveness as the population doing the farming shrinks and gets older. So expanding the Smart Farm program will be a key part of overcoming the labor shortage. The government hopes to convert 40% of greenhouses, 10% of livestock farms, and 25% of orchards into smart farms by the end of this year.
Korea has many types of greenhouses, and they have requirements that can't be satisfied by a lot of models from other countries. So Korea is trying to set up different systems for different types of greenhouses that will help create an environment best suited to what's being grown.
Through our survey, we found that majority of farmers feel it's quite a burden to pay for the installation of these facilities and devices. So the government will provide financial assistance to cover 50% of the cost.
From checking the conditions of plants and animals to controlling the environment, ICT is involved in every part of the process. It's only a matter of time before a historic shift in which Smart Farm turns farming into a non-labor intensive activity and draws even more people into the sector.
오정희, Business Daily.
And that brings us to the end, but we'll be back tomorrow with more of the day's top business stories, so don't forget to tune in then. Thanks for watching, and see you soon.